Imagine a world in chaos, civil wars, political intrigue, and the collapse of the Roman Republic. But out of this turmoil rose a figure who would not only end the disorder but transformed Rome into an empire that would dominate the ancient world for centuries. His name was Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, and his reign marked the beginning of the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. Today we dive into the life and legacy of Augustus, the man who changed the course of history. The story of Augustus begins far from the grandeur and power of imperial Rome. Born as Gaius Octavius Thurinus on September 23, 63 BCE, he came into the world during one of the most turbulent periods in Roman history. The Roman Republic, once a bastion of order and republican ideals, was collapsing under the weight of civil wars, political corruption, and the growing ambitions of powerful generals. It was a time of immense change, and Augustus would soon find himself at the very center of it all. Augustus was born into a respectable family, though it was not one of the most powerful or wealthiest in Rome. His father, also named Gaius Octavius, was a senator and governor, known for his honesty and efficiency, though his career was cut short when he died unexpectedly in 59 BCE, leaving young Octavius to be raised by his mother, Aetia Balbacisonia. Aetia was a remarkable woman, known for her piety and connection to the Roman elite. She was the niece of Julius Caesar, one of the most influential men in Rome, a relationship that would soon shape Octavius' destiny. As Octavius grew up, he witnessed the chaos engulfing the Roman Republic. The rise of Julius Caesar, his great-uncle, was one of the most defining events of the era. In 49 BCE, Caesar crossed the Rubicon River, defying the Senate and sparking a civil war that pitted him against the traditionalist forces of Pompey and the Senate. Caesar's victory in this war effectively ended the Roman Republic as it had been known for centuries, and though he styled himself as dictator for life, it was clear that the Republic's days were numbered. During these formative years, young Octavius was trained in the ways of Roman aristocracy. His education was rigorous, with a focus on rhetoric, philosophy, and military tactics skills that would be invaluable in navigating the dangerous waters of Roman politics. While Octavius was ambitious, few could have predicted the heights he would eventually reach. His position in Roman society was notable, but not exceptional. He was just one of many young men from noble families hoping to make their mark. Meanwhile, Julius Caesar was solidifying his power. His victories in Gaul had made him immensely popular with the people of Rome, but his growing dominance was a threat to the Senate and the traditional republican system. When Caesar declared himself dictator perpetuo, dictator for life, it sent shockwaves through Rome. For many, Caesar's rise was a necessary step to bring stability to a fractured republic, but to others, it was a sign that Rome was slipping into tyranny. On the Ides of March, 44 BCE, the unthinkable happened. Julius Caesar was assassinated by a group of senators who believed they were saving the Republic. Brutus, Cassius, and their fellow conspirators stabbed Caesar 23 times on the Senate floor, hoping to restore Rome to its former republican glory. But instead of stabilizing the Republic, Caesar's murder plunged Rome into even greater chaos. The conspirators had underestimated the loyalty of Caesar's supporters and the ambition of his young heir. When Caesar was killed, Octavius was studying in Apollonia, a city in Greece. He had been sent there to complete his education and prepare for a military command in Caesar's expanding empire. But his world changed forever when news of the assassination reached him. What's more, Octavius soon discovered that Caesar's will named him as his adopted son and heir, making the young, inexperienced Octavius the successor to the most powerful man in Rome. At just 18 years old, Octavius found himself at a crossroads. Should he accept his inheritance and return to Rome, where his great-uncle's murderers still held influence, or should he remain in Greece, far from the danger that awaited him? Many of his advisors urged caution. Rome was a dangerous place, and Octavius was not yet prepared for the brutal world of Roman politics. But the young heir had already shown a remarkable sense of determination. Defying the advice of many, Octavius chose to return to Rome and claim his legacy. Octavius returned to Rome with a bold vision. Though he was young and inexperienced, he had two great advantages: the loyalty of many of Caesar's veterans and the political support of Caesar's allies. Among these allies was Mark Antony, one of Caesar's closest generals and a man who had expected to inherit much of Caesar's power. Antony, however, was initially dismissive of Octavius, seeing him as little more than a boy with no real political clout. But Octavius would soon prove Antony wrong. Octavius quickly set about consolidating his position. He used Caesar's wealth to win the loyalty of the Roman people, paying for public games and distributing funds to Caesar's veterans. His strategic generosity endeared him to the masses. and he carefully cultivated his image as the rightful heir to Caesar's legacy. At the same time, Octavius shrewdly began to maneuver within the Roman political system, forging alliances with key senators and military leaders. Octavius' greatest weapon was his connection to Caesar. He knew that the Roman people revered his great uncle, and he positioned himself as the champion of Caesar's legacy, promising to avenge his murder. In a shrewd political move, Octavius aligned himself with the Popularis faction, the political group that supported Caesar's reforms and represented the interests of the common people. By doing so, he gained the support of many Roman citizens who were disillusioned with the traditional elites of the Senate. With growing influence and a clear vision, Octavius realized that he could not avenge Caesar or claim power on his own. In 43 BCE, Octavius formed an uneasy alliance with Mark Antony and Lepidus, a respected military leader. Together, they created the Second Triumvirate, a powerful political alliance that divided control of the Roman world among the three men. This alliance gave Octavius the military and political support he needed to challenge Caesar's assassins, who still held significant power. The Second Triumvirate was marked by bloodshed and political ambition. Octavius and Antony quickly turned their attention to Brutus and Cassius, the leading figures in Caesar's assassination. The climactic Battle of Philippi in 42 BCE saw the forces of the Triumvirate clash with the armies of the conspirators. In a fierce and brutal confrontation, Octavius and Antony emerged victorious, and both Brutus and Cassius took their own lives, marking the end of the Republican cause. Though the Battle of Philippi marked the end of Caesar's assassins, it was only the beginning for Octavius. He had avenged his great uncle's death, but the Roman world was still deeply divided. The uneasy alliance with Mark Antony would soon begin to unravel, and Octavius would find himself facing a new and even more dangerous rivalry. But the boy who had returned to Rome with little more than a famous name was now a formidable player in the deadly game of Roman politics. The stage was set for his rise to ultimate power. In the aftermath of Julius Caesar's assassination, Rome was in turmoil. The once great Roman Republic was fractured, its political system torn apart by years of civil war and personal rivalries. With Caesar gone, the balance of power shifted dramatically, and the city teetered on the edge of collapse. The Senate, desperate to regain control, was powerless to stop the rising tide of ambitious generals and politicians who sought to fill the void left by Caesar's death. Amidst this chaos was Gaius Octavius, young, shrewd, and now Caesar's adopted son. Though he had avenged Caesar at the Battle of Philippi, Octavius still had to contend with his co-ruler, Mark Antony, and the third member of the Triumvirate, Lepidus. In theory, the Second Triumvirate was meant to stabilize the Roman state by dividing power between its three leaders. But in reality, it was an uneasy alliance held together by ambition and the ever-present threat of external enemies. Tensions simmered beneath the surface, as each man sought to secure his own position at the expense of the others. In 40 BCE, the Roman world was officially divided among the members of the Second Triumvirate. Octavian took control of the western provinces, including Italy, Gaul, and Hispania. Mark Antony governed the eastern provinces, including Greece, Egypt, and Asia Minor. And Lepidus was given control of North Africa. But this division was far from harmonious. Lepidus, the weakest of the three, was quickly sidelined by his more ambitious counterparts, leaving Octavian and Antony in an increasingly fraught rivalry. The seeds of conflict between Octavian and Antony were sown not only by their ambition, but also by their vastly different personalities and priorities. While Octavian was disciplined, strategic, and focused on securing his power in Rome, Antony became enamored with Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt. His alliance with Cleopatra was both political and personal, and their relationship became the subject of scandal and intrigue in Rome. As Antony spent more time in Egypt, he began to neglect his duties in the eastern provinces, further straining his alliance with Octavian. Octavian, ever the master of political manipulation, saw an opportunity to turn Antony's association with Cleopatra to his advantage. He began a propaganda campaign, portraying Antony as a man who had betrayed his Roman heritage in favor of foreign luxury and decadence. Octavian's rhetoric was designed to stoke the fears of the Roman people, suggesting that Antony, under Cleopatra's influence, planned to carve out an Eastern empire with Egypt at its center, threatening the very foundations of Roman authority. In Alexandria, Antony and Cleopatra lived in opulence, their court filled with luxury and spectacle. Antony had declared Cleopatra the Queen of Kings and recognized her son, Caesarion, as Julius Caesar's legitimate heir, a direct challenge to Octavian's claim to power. The Roman people, already suspicious of the foreign queen, were further inflamed by rumors that Antony intended to make Alexandria the capital of a new Roman-Egyptian empire. Meanwhile, in Rome, Octavian was positioning himself as the true defender of Roman values and tradition. A stark contrast to Antony's perceived betrayal. While Antony indulged in the luxuries of the East, Octavian was quietly consolidating power. He courted the support of the Senate, many of whom were disillusioned with Antony's actions, and bolstered his military forces. Octavian's shrewd political maneuvering won him the backing of key senators and generals, including Marcus V. Pesanius Agrippa, his most trusted military commander. Agrippa's loyalty would prove crucial in the coming conflict with Antony and Cleopatra. By 32 BCE, the rivalry between Octavian and Antony had reached its breaking point. Octavian declared war not on Antony directly, but on Cleopatra. This clever move allowed Octavian to frame the conflict as a war to save Rome from the influence of a foreign queen, rather than a civil war against a fellow Roman. It was a brilliant piece of political theater, and it galvanized support for Octavian's cause. Rome's legions, loyal to Octavian and Agrippa, prepared for war, while Antony and Cleopatra marshaled their forces in Egypt. The decisive moment came on September 2nd, 31 BCE, at the Battle of Actium, a naval battle off the coast of Greece. Octavian's fleet, commanded by Agrippa, faced off against the combined forces of Antony and Cleopatra, though Antony's fleet was formidable. The battle turned against him when Cleopatra, seeing the tide shifting, fled with her ships, leaving Antony's forces in disarray. Abandoned by his most important ally, Antony's fleet was crushed and his remaining forces surrendered. Antony and Cleopatra retreated to Alexandria, where their once grand ambitions lay in ruins. Antony, realizing that his cause was lost, took his own life, dying in the arms of Cleopatra. Soon after, Cleopatra followed him, famously committing suicide by allowing an asp, a venomous snake, to bite her. With their deaths, the last remnants of opposition to Octavian were extinguished, and the fate of the Roman world was sealed. With Antony and Cleopatra gone, Octavian returned to Rome in triumph. The Senate, grateful for his victory and eager to maintain the appearance of republican governance, bestowed upon him unprecedented powers. But Octavian, ever cautious, did not make the mistake of his adoptive father, Julius Caesar, who had declared himself dictator. Instead, Octavian presented himself as a restorer of the republic, while in reality he wielded absolute power. In 27 BCE, the Senate granted Octavian the title of Augustus, meaning the revered one, marking the beginning of his reign as the first emperor of Rome. Augustus was careful to maintain the outward appearance of republican rule, calling himself princeps, or first among equals, rather than taking the title of king or dictator. But in reality, Augustus held all the reins of power. He controlled the military, the treasury, and the Senate itself, ensuring that no one could challenge his authority. With his rivals defeated and his power secure, Augustus set about transforming Rome from a fractured republic into a stable empire. He reorganized the Roman military, creating a standing army loyal to the emperor, and established a professional civil service to administer the vast territories under Roman control. His reign ushered in the Pax Romana, a period of relative peace and prosperity that would last for over 2 centuries, during which Rome expanded its borders and solidified its dominance over the Mediterranean world. Though Augustus claimed to be restoring the republic, in reality he had quietly taken control of every key aspect of Roman governance. He held supreme authority over the military as imperator, and controlled the treasury through his appointment as Pontifex Maximus, the chief religious authority in Rome. In addition, Augustus was granted the power of tribunicia potestas, the rights of the tribune, which gave him veto power over the Senate and the ability to propose laws. These titles and powers allowed Augustus to effectively control the state without appearing as a tyrant. One of Augustus' most significant reforms was his reorganization of the Roman military. Under the late Republic, the army had often been loyal to individual generals, contributing to the cycle of civil wars that had plagued Rome for decades. Augustus put an end to this by creating a standing army, paid directly by the state and loyal only to the emperor. He stationed these legions along the empire's borders, ensuring the safety of Rome's vast territories while reducing the chances of internal rebellion. In addition, Augustus established the Praetorian Guard, a powerful and elite force that served as his personal bodyguard and enforcers of his will in the capital. Augustus didn't just reform the military, he overhauled the administration of the entire empire. Recognizing that the vast Roman territories could no longer be governed by the old, inefficient republican system, Augustus established a professional civil service to oversee the day-to-day functioning of the empire. These bureaucrats were responsible for everything from tax collection to the management of public works and the administration of justice in the provinces. By creating a stable and efficient system of governance, Augustus laid the foundations for an empire that would endure for centuries. Augustus understood that political stability could only be achieved if Rome's social fabric was equally strong. To that end, he championed a return to traditional Roman values, promoting family life, marriage, and moral conduct as essential to the health of the state. Augustus passed a series of laws designed to encourage citizens to marry and have children, offering rewards to those who did and punishing those who remained single. His moral legislation also targeted public behavior, banning luxury and excess while promoting a more modest and disciplined lifestyle. These reforms, known as the Lex Julia, were part of Augustus' broader effort to revive the ancient religious and moral traditions that had once made Rome strong. Religion played a key role in Augustus' vision for a renewed Rome. As Pontifex Maximus, he took personal responsibility for restoring Rome's temples and reviving long-neglected religious practices. Augustus commissioned the construction of new temples dedicated to Rome's gods, including the Temple of Mars, Ultor Mars the Avenger, symbolizing his victory in avenging Caesar's death. These religious reforms were not only an expression of piety, but also a means of legitimizing Augustus' rule. By positioning himself as the protector of Roman religion, Augustus further cemented his authority in the eyes of the Roman people. Augustus' reign was a time of unprecedented building and architectural innovation. He famously claimed, "I found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble to restore Rome's grandeur." Augustus initiated a massive public works program that transformed the city into a showcase of imperial power. He commissioned the construction of roads, aqueducts, and monuments, many of which still stand today as testaments to his reign. Among the most famous of these projects were the Era Pacis, an altar dedicated to the goddess of peace, and the Forum of Augustus, a new public space adorned with statues of Rome's greatest leaders. These projects were not only practical but also symbolic of Augustus' vision of a new, unified Rome. Under Augustus, the Roman Empire expanded to its greatest extent. His military campaigns secured new territories in Spain, Gaul, and the Balkans, while Egypt, under Roman control after the defeat of Cleopatra, became one of the empire's most valuable provinces. Yet, Augustus was not merely a conqueror, he was also a peacemaker. His reign ushered in the Pax Romana a period of relative peace and stability that lasted for over 2 centuries. During this time, the Roman world experienced a golden age of economic prosperity, cultural flourishing, and political stability. The Pax Romana brought enormous benefits to the Roman people. The economy flourished, fueled by trade routes that stretched from Britannia to Egypt and from Hispania to the Middle East. Roman merchants exchanged goods with distant lands, while Rome's roads and aqueducts made the empire's cities more connected and prosperous than ever before. In addition, the peace secured by Augustus' military reforms allowed Roman culture to flourish, with advancements in art, literature, and architecture reflecting the stability of the era. By the time Augustus reached the later years of his life, he had achieved what many thought impossible: a stable and prosperous empire that stretched across 3 continents. Yet, Augustus was not content to rest on his laurels. He knew that the true test of his legacy would come after his death. To ensure a smooth transition of power, Augustus spent years carefully grooming potential successors, including his stepson Tiberius, whom he eventually adopted and named as his heir. Augustus' careful planning paid off. Upon his death in 14 CE, the transition to Tiberius' rule was smooth, and the imperial system that Augustus had created endured. His reign had transformed Rome from a fragile republic into a stable empire, laying the foundation for centuries of Roman dominance. The institutions and reforms that Augustus established, the standing army, the professional civil service, the reformed tax system, would shape the empire for generations to come. By the time of Augustus' death in 14 CE, he had ruled Rome for over 40 years, longer than anyone could have imagined when he first took power. During his reign, Augustus transformed the Roman state from a fragile republic torn apart by civil war into a vast and stable empire, stretching from the Atlantic coast of Spain in the west to the deserts of Syria in the east, from the rivers of Germania in the north to the fertile plains of Egypt in the south. His policies, institutions, and reforms created a lasting framework that would define the Roman Empire for centuries. Augustus expanded the Roman Empire to its greatest territorial extent at the time, securing its borders through a combination of military might and diplomacy. His legions patrolled the frontiers of the empire, from the Rhine and Danube rivers in the north to the deserts of North Africa in the south. While his conquests in Spain, Gaul, and Egypt brought vast wealth into Roman coffers, Augustus was also wise in recognizing the limits of expansion. After costly campaigns in Germania, he famously declared that the empire's borders should be maintained rather than overextended, ensuring stability rather than pursuing endless conquest. One of Augustus' most enduring legacies was the Pax Romana, the Roman peace. This period of relative peace and stability, which lasted for over 2 centuries, allowed for unprecedented economic prosperity, cultural flourishing, and technological advancements. The Pax Romana meant that the people of the empire, from wealthy elites in the cities to farmers in the provinces, could live in security, knowing that the Roman legions were protecting them from external threats and internal unrest. Trade flourished across the empire, with goods flowing from the farthest reaches of the Roman world, from spices in the east to silver from Spain, fostering economic growth and cultural exchange. Augustus' legacy was also visible in the physical landscape of Rome and its provinces. The vast network of Roman roads, many of which were built or improved under Augustus, allowed for efficient communication and the rapid movement of troops across the empire. His ambitious building program not only beautified the capital but also ensured that Rome had the infrastructure necessary to sustain a vast and growing population. Temples, aqueducts, amphitheaters, and public buildings were constructed throughout the empire, leaving a lasting architectural legacy that still inspires awe today. One of the most symbolic monuments of Augustus' reign was the Ara Pacis, or Altar of Peace, constructed to commemorate the peace and prosperity he had brought to Rome. The intricate reliefs on the altar depict scenes of Roman life, religious rituals, and Augustus' family, reinforcing the idea that Augustus' rule was divinely sanctioned. The imagery of Augustus as both a political and religious leader permeated Roman art and architecture during this period, further legitimizing his authority and linking his reign to the gods themselves. Augustus' careful cultivation of his public image didn't end with his death. Upon his passing, the Senate officially deified him, declaring Augustus a god divus Augustus. Temples were built in his honor across the empire, and his image was worshipped by the Roman people. Augustus had long understood the power of religion in shaping political authority, and his deification ensured that his legacy would be intertwined with the divine order of the Roman world. His successor, Tiberius, and future emperors would continue to use this model of divine rulership, reinforcing the idea that the emperor was not only the political leader, but also a figure with sacred significance. Adopting his steps in Tiberius and grooming him to take the reins of power, this peaceful transfer of authority marked the beginning of a new era in Roman politics, the Principate, where the emperor held ultimate authority while maintaining the outward forms of republican governance. Tiberius' successful accession demonstrated the stability of the system Augustus had created, ensuring the continuity of the imperial office for centuries. Though Augustus' system of government provided Rome with stability, not all of his successors lived up to his example. Some, like Tiberius, followed in Augustus' footsteps, maintaining the empire's stability and prosperity. Others, such as Caligula and Nero, deviated from Augustus' principles, indulging in personal excesses and neglecting the governance of the empire. Their failures, however, only highlighted the brilliance of Augustus' rule. The Roman people and the Senate often looked back on Augustus' reign as a golden age, an ideal against which future emperors were judged. Augustus' legacy wasn't just political or military, it was also cultural. Under his reign, Rome experienced a golden age of literature and art. Poets like Virgil, Ovid, and Horace flourished during this period, producing works that would become timeless classics. Virgil's Aeneid, in particular, celebrated the founding of Rome and Augustus' role in securing its future. The poem not only glorified Rome's past but also served as a piece of political propaganda, linking Augustus' reign to the gods and the destiny of the Roman people. Through literature, Augustus crafted a narrative of his rule that would endure long after his death. Augustus was a great patron of the arts, and his reign saw the construction of theaters, libraries, and public spaces where Roman culture could thrive. These investments in culture were not simply acts of generosity, they were part of Augustus' broader effort to create a shared Roman identity, one that would bind the diverse peoples of the empire together under his rule. Public spectacles, such as gladiatorial games, chariot races, and theater performances, became tools of statecraft, reinforcing Augustus' image as the protector of Roman tradition and the bringer of peace. The reforms Augustus instituted, military, administrative, and cultural, created a lasting structure that continued to support the Roman Empire long after his death. His professional standing army, civil service, and tax system ensured that the empire could be efficiently governed, even as it grew larger and more complex. Future emperors, from Trajan to Marcus Aurelius, built upon Augustus' foundation, expanding the empire's borders and maintaining its stability. The system Augustus created became so deeply embedded in Roman governance that it endured for hundreds of years, surviving even the eventual division of the empire. Though the Western Roman Empire would eventually fall in 476 CE, Augustus' legacy continued to influence the Eastern Roman, or Byzantine, Empire for centuries. The structures of governance, the legal system, and even the concept of the emperor as a divinely appointed ruler were all rooted in Augustus' innovations. His reign marked the beginning of Rome's transformation from a city-state to a global empire, and his influence continued to shape the course of history long after the last Roman emperor had fallen. Augustus was more than just Rome's first emperor, he was the architect of the Roman Empire itself. His vision, leadership, and reforms created a lasting legacy that shaped not only the history of Rome but also the entire Western world. Today, Augustus is remembered as one of the most influential figures in history, a leader whose reign marked the beginning of an era of unprecedented peace, prosperity, and cultural achievement. The empire he built may have fallen, but his legacy endures. Thank you for joining us as we explored the incredible life and legacy of Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more historical insights. Until next time, let's continue to uncover the past to better understand our present and future.